This week, the topic is, are you chosen? As I've said, we've been going through Judaism this wonderful month. We began with God is good, that the infinite love intelligence in the absolute essence is always good where there is no opposite. That is a fundamental core concept in Judaism. Not only is there one power, one presence, but that power is infinitely and eternally good. That's core. The second week we talked about tradition, how important tradition is in Judaism, having those deep roots in your own culture and your own religious history, that they cultivate that every day, the connection with their past into their present, which helps them fly into the future, gives them great energy and vitality for the future. And last week we talked about prophets and visionaries who are coming from the place of the highest possibility and calling forth the people to be their highest potential. And when we were playing too small, when people are playing too small or too limited, they would call us out, come on, let's expand, let's come from a higher place. And this week we are going to open up to the idea that also is in Judaism, which is that they are the chosen people. And this can feel like a difficult topic or wrangle topic to say one group of people feels like they are chosen, until we really recognize and own that most people feel that way. That if you look at most tribes, clans, groups, they at one point feel like they are better than other tribes, clans, groups, nations, religions. That ethnocentricity, it goes egocentric, ethnocentric, world-centric. Ethnocentricity is something we've all had to go through as individuals. We've gone through our ethnocentric stage, we've gone through our egocentric stage, our ethnocentric stage, and as cultures and as groups. So to find a religion that was started by a tribe 2,000 years BC or thousands of years ago, thinking that they are the chosen ones, is pretty normal. It's not unusual. It's just that it's in written history. In Buddhism, you don't hear about the Buddhist culture and history, you just hear the principles of Buddhism. In Hinduism, you don't learn Hinduism necessarily as a history of the Indian people. You read about Hinduism, about what they believe about God. In Judaism, what they believe about God is actually so integrated into their history that you hear their history of a people as well as their religion, which is why you hear about it more in their tradition. What's also interesting is individuals have this sense of specialness. It's interesting, I know some of you study the Course of Miracles, and the Course of Miracles says no one is special, but the opposite is also true, where everyone is special. Joseph Chilton Pearce wrote a book called The Biology of Transcendence, and he talks about how most people, and he thinks it's inherent in us, that this is not something we put on, by 18 or 19 years old have a sense that they're going to do something great in the world. There's a sense of I'm special, and I'm going to do something special in the world. And he says that often leads to the midlife crisis in the 40s or 50s, because if you've had this belief that you're going to do something special, and if you didn't live up to it, then you sort of maybe crash a little, or I didn't fulfill this great idea. But his point is that this idea of specialness is actually inherent in all of us. That most of us have a sense, we might not feel confident, it's not that we're arrogant, that we still have our humility or our challenges, but there's also, in the midst of that, even in the people who struggle with esteem the most, also simultaneously have that sense of, and I'm special. There's something about me that's important. And sometimes we lose sight of that. The world beats us down, but we all have that. So when we start to recognize that just perhaps, this divine presence wants to feel special in, through, and as each of us, wants us to know that each and every one of us is special. St. Augustine said, we are the center of God's love, where there is no circumference. We're the center of God's love where there is no circumference. That quote is actually attributed to a lot of different people. I think he's the originator, before all the other people, but other people may differ. But the idea is that the center of the universe is at every moment in time and space. So every one of us is the center of the universe where there is no circumference. So everyone is the center of the universe. And so what would it be like to say and to claim and to know and to feel that you are chosen? That you could say, well, that would make me feel special, but at the same time, everyone else is chosen. What an extraordinary way to live life is to acknowledge that every person I see is chosen, there's an inherent value and respect that we start to pay. That's the namaste. I see the divine in you, and you've been chosen. But it's not diminishing my own light, and I've been chosen as well. And sometimes it's easier for us to see the God in someone else, the specialness in someone else, and not always the specialness in ourselves. So to claim and accept our chosenness. Going back to Judaism, what did this mean to the Jewish people? To be chosen did not mean that they could do whatever they wanted, that they would have whatever they wanted, which I think sometimes we think chosen means. I'm special, I'm better, so I get all the goodies, and other people don't. In Judaism, what special meant, being chosen meant, is that they had to listen and obey to the word of God. With being chosen came an incredible responsibility. We are here to listen. I love the reading today. All Ernest Holmes was saying is listen. I am listening and following. He was using words that we say we shouldn't use. Ought, should, follow this divine presence. Listen to it, to put no other gods before me. I mean, it's over and over in the Old Testament. Put no other gods before me. Put nothing else before me. Love me with your whole heart, body, mind, and soul. Listen to me. Follow me. There is a responsibility to follow me, and follow me doesn't mean that you're always going to be led to great things. It might lead to difficult things, to challenging things, but the goal is to follow me, and then ultimately the promised land will happen. The goodness will happen, but we don't know when that's going to happen. Moses wandered the desert for 40 years with the Jewish, not Moses by himself, the entire Jewish tribe. Wandered the desert for 40 years as the chosen people. Always getting their needs met during those 40 years, though. Always getting their needs met. There was a responsibility that comes with that. For me, part of that responsibility, and as you see it in the Bible, is really taking our relationship with this power and this presence. I'm just going to use the word God here. I know some people don't like that word. What we mean by that is not a God up in the sky, but the divine infinite love intelligence that surrounds and unfolds and is everything and is within us and without. There's nothing else but the divine. No place where it stops and something else begins. So this presence, this power, this intelligence that is within us that I call God is to be in relationship with that every single day, to put it before our boss, our clients, getting a paycheck, our loved ones. Over and over, this is the story. So that is a responsibility. So we begin to ask ourselves, do I really put God first all of the time? I can tell you right now, it's something I'm still working on. Because other things start to take priority, meaning that becomes more important to me. Well, I do my spiritual practices every day. But there are things energetically that will start, like, that will seem like that's the end-all, be-all. And if that doesn't happen, I'm like, no. God is the end-all, be-all. The divine presence is the end-all, be-all. What are our idols? And to be in that loving and constant communion and relationship with this divine one. In Judaism, the divine presence was something that one is in relationship with, in dialogue with. It's our finite self, if you want to put it in different terms, our finite self in relationship with our infinite self. The absolute in relationship with the relative. But it is a constant relationship that we are engaged in every single day. Why is this important? Because I think even in our spiritually progressive world, we can sometimes put other people, like there's more God where they are than where I am. Right? We can do that still. Even, I was thinking about, well, I'm being totally honest here. I had to think, well, am I chosen? Spirit came and asked me to be a minister, and I'm a minister. Is that chosen? And it's so, you have to ask these questions. Ask yourself the hard questions. No, nobody is chosen. I'm chosen to play a role. So the minister's role in our spiritual communities is not about a minister's closer to God than everybody else. That is not the role of the minister. The divine presence is closer to you than your very breath. There's no more God in any individual than another individual. We are all this is the miracle of what Judaism was bringing. God is in, through, and as everybody equally, loves everybody equally. The values of equality and justice were so important in Judaism. So even their prophets, some of their prophets were rabbis and priests and kings, but a lot of their rabbis were shepherds, people of no education at all, and they still listened to them because the divine is in, through, and as everybody equally. I just play the role. The minister's role is just to remind us that this is important. You have a lot of things in the world crashing in on us, telling us it's important, it's important, it's important. So it's the job of a minister, the job of our spiritual books, our communities, to remind us over and over and again, the most important thing is this one power and this one presence. Are you putting it first in your life? Are you in relationship with it? It's not that I am an intermediary as a role as a minister. We are all completely equal in the eyes and the presence of pure spirit. This week we're going to see Reverend Michael Beckwith. Why are we going to, if God is equally within us, why are we taking this whole day-long trip to go? We're going to the Burbank Gardens. We're going on a tour there. We're going to be having a picnic lunch, and then we're going to go see Reverend Michael. Why all this? Why do we have to go anywhere? It's a good question. We don't really. Why we do these things, why we read books. I read a book always in the first thing when I get in the morning, because they remind me. A lot of my dreams will be race consciousness, so I have to be reminded as soon as I wake up. There's just as much God in Reverend Michael as there is in everyone in this. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, for those of you who don't know, Reverend Michael Beckwith is a spiritual teacher, minister. He serves down at Agape in Los Angeles, and a lot of people follow him. I would call him a spiritual celebrity. The Agape has about 10,000 people coming and going, and probably many that follow beyond who consider themselves members. And he's sort of the central person of this. He's like an individual celebrity. Having worked there, everybody wants a piece of him, and everybody wants to be near him. And I really got to see what that was like, that spiritual celebrity, the hungering to be close to someone who people feel the presence of God. Now, why do people feel, if God is equally in all of us, why do people go to Reverend Michael? Because it's more realized in him. The transparency is clearer. There's less of the separation between his finite self and the infinite self. That union is clearer. So when people are in his presence, they are reminded of who they are more. Because he is so clear, his embodiment, people become more embodied. And that's why we often go to spiritual people, is because often they may have a greater realization of it. But that is not to be confused with that there's more God where they are. So we go to people, I read my books, I have my spiritual teachers, but we don't go to them thinking that there's more God there. This is what we have to remember. This is what God, who was telling the Jewish people, don't put anyone before me. They didn't put Moses before God. Don't put spiritual teachers. They are the vehicles. They may be the vessels, but there's only one God, and that is your God, and you have a direct contact with him. These people, books, teachers, workshops, classes, all are these wonderful gifts to remind us over and over and over to let these walls of separation dissolve, to allow our small, finite self dissolve into the oneness of pure love, into the oceanic bliss of harmony, grace, peace, and beauty, of wholeness and perfection. That all of these things are inspiring us to have our relationship with the Divine One. I was thinking about channeling. We had some conversations this week, and I was just thinking about my own relationship with people who channel and do medium work and psychic work. And I was just noting that that's something I don't do, and I was just being with that in terms of, I don't mean channeling, I don't go to other people who channel. And this is the way I look at it. I'm just throwing it out there for y'all. I'm not saying you have to agree with me or disagree with me. It's just how my experience. To me, it's like having a best friend. Let's just say my best friend's name is Jane. And Jane and I talk every single day. We are in this incredible relationship. We love each other. We're talking back and forth. I'm growing because of Jane's presence in my life. And then someone comes over to me and says, hey, Susan's been talking to Jane, and you should hear what Jane's been telling Susan. And I'm like, and my first reaction was, well, why don't I just talk to Jane? Why do I have to go talk to Susan, who's talking to Jane, right? To me, that's a little bit what channeling is. It's like going to somebody else and hearing their relationship with the divine, and I have my own relationship with the divine, and I don't feel particularly called. The only way I'm going to go to Susan is if Jane says, hey, you know what? I've been talking to Susan, and I think what I've been sharing with her, you would be really interested in as well. It might really help you in this particular area. And since I've been spending a lot of time with her in this area, why don't you go talk to Susan and share what we've been talking about? Then I'll go talk to Susan. Oh, I just realized Susan. I had that name in my mind. We have a Susan in our community. I try to use names that aren't in our community. I'm going to talk to you, Susan. I'm coming over. But now I'm going because Jane has guided me to do it. Not because I think Susan has something that I don't have. Not because I think we do this as human beings. That's part of the finite experience. We're always comparing. We have a sense of someone has more than I have, and so I got to go hear what Susan has to say because I don't have enough. What we want, I have to use a different name. So the idea of our journey, what the divine presence is telling the Jewish people as the chosen, and we are all chosen, not just as individuals, spiritual communities, religions are all chosen, agnostic, everyone's chosen. But what the divine is revealing to the Jews is only me. Only follow me. Only if I guide you to someone else, go listen to somebody else. Like the books that I read, I'm always guided to. I don't just say, this sounds good, or people often suggest books to me. I take them, and if I get an inner guidance to read them, I'll read them. But I'd only read what's innerly guided. That's living the life of putting the divine presence that is within you first and foremost every single day. That's what it means to love the Lord, our own personal God, every day. The responsibility that we have, if we are really accept, when we say, what does it mean to be chosen? It means to be in direct relationship with that which chooses us. So every day, am I putting the divine presence as more important than anything else in my life? We get to start asking ourselves, am I listening to that more than I'm listening to the voices in my head? Am I listening to it more than I'm listening to people who it doesn't sound right, but they're telling me I should do something? Listen within. Become intimate. Know your inner voice. I love the analogy Mary Mann Morrissey uses. Someone said, well, how do you know it's the voice of God and not somebody else? And she said, well, when your mother calls and then your mother goes, hello, and you immediately know it's your mother. All she has to do is say hello. Oh, that's my mom. That's what the voice of God is. It's so familiar. You don't confuse it with anyone else. The more we commune with it, the more we're in relationship with it, the more we're giving ourselves to it. We know the voice when we hear it. It's not like maybe it is, maybe it's not. I know that's my mom calling. I know it. Hi, Mom. I don't need her to go and say, this is your mother calling, and you know it's your mother calling because I'm going to remind you of all your past. No, you just know. You know that you know that you know, right? That's intimacy. To be in an intimate relationship with the chosen one. It's a back and forth relationship. So that's the first invitation. What does it mean to be chosen? It is to be an intimate relationship, to be responsible in that relationship. The Jews felt and experienced in the Bible, there was a lot expected of them. Morals, ethics, there was a lot expected of them. If you're the chosen, you got to show up this way. So you might want to ask yourselves, what is the divine presence always asking of me? And am I listening? Am I willing to listen? Am I willing to do the things that are uncomfortable? Am I willing to travel the wilderness for 40 years without knowing how it's going to end? With this promise, 40 years I'm going to be in the promised land. The second, there's only two. The second is contribution. Houston Smith makes the point, and then he quotes other people who make this point, that the Jewish people's contribution to the world, to Western civilization, is completely out of proportion with their numbers. What they have given back to society, what they have given to this world, musically, scientifically, religiously, artistically, in business, and in so many areas, far outweighs in proportion to how many people there are. For in Judaism, to be chosen means to give, to serve. You are chosen to give back to the world. You are chosen to contribute and make the world a better place. Last night, Jack, Julian, and I were watching a movie called The Emperor's Club with Kevin Kline and Emil Hirsch. Came out in the early 2000s. And it's all about character. And Kevin Kline plays a teacher to these high school boys. And he says something at the beginning, and I had to rewind and write it down because it was so perfect for what we're talking about here today. The quote is, what he said to his students was, great ambition and conquest without contribution. Great ambition and conquest without contribution has no significance. That what makes anything great is the contribution of what it adds to make the world a better place. I was thinking about this trip to see Reverend Michael, and I sent out an email, and I was saying our intention was that after this whole day's, I'm calling it a pilgrimage adventure, that when we come home, we're going to feel more expanded spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. We are going to be in an expanded state of consciousness. We are going to be more awake and more who we really are when we leave. That's the intention for the day. And after I sent out the email, I was thinking about it, and I said, there's no way that's going to happen unless we give it first. That when we go on Friday, our intention, then if that's our intention to expand spiritually in our awakening, in our awakening, in our mind, heart, and body, then we have to give from that place. Everywhere we go, at Luther Burbank Gardens, at the picnic grounds, at Santa Rosa, we're going to be surrounded by people we don't know all day long. Are we giving all that we are? Are we shining the light of pure spirit wherever we go? Are we contributing? Are we making the picnic area better? Are we making the Luther Burbank Gardens area greater? Are we making that Friday evening better because of what we're here to give, to share? We are contributing because that is the way we are going to expand, is by what we give. The creative process is something that we teach here in our teaching. It is happening all the time. And what that means is spirit is always giving itself into form, always. It never stops. The creative process is happening right now, within, through, and as all of us. The creative process is always happening. This whole universe is the creative process. Spirit is always giving of itself. So when we are aligned with spirit, when we know that we are the chosen in spirit, then we have to be in that giving energy. We have to be in that creative contributing energy that's shining its light, because that is what spirit is and does, is giving of itself over and over and over. I think of someone like Reverend Michael, as we look at him, as someone who is realized. His connection and embodiment of the divine presence is palpable. And I look at the way he lives his life. It is constant service. He never stops. I think in the 20 years that I've known him, he's maybe gone on one vacation for a couple days. That even generally most times he takes a trip, he takes a group of people, and it's a whole spiritual process. That he does his services every Sunday. He always makes sure he's back. But throughout the week, he's traveling all the week, giving, speaking. He never stops. I don't ever remember him just saying, I need to take a respite or a retreat. Because as he says, the more I give, the more energy I have. He's not doing it for the money. He's not doing it for the fame. Although those things are there, that is not why he's doing it. Because you would wear out. That's ego. And he would be exhausted, and he would be tired, and he would be burned out. But he doesn't seem to ever get exhausted or tired or burned out, because he's not doing it for himself. He's not doing it to get things from the universe. He's only a vehicle of the Divine One. So isn't it interesting that someone who people feel is so awake spends his entire life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He does his spiritual practices. It takes him about 4 or 5 hours every morning to do his spiritual practices. Ricky says, I can tell you, everywhere we travel, he never doesn't do his it doesn't matter where we are, what country we're in, he's doing his spiritual practices. And he's giving. That's what feeds him. He connects with the divine. He ascends. He takes time to ascend. He takes a lot of time to ascend, not 15 minutes a day, several hours to be in that ascension place, and from that ascension place, he's giving the rest of his time. What is our contribution? To be the chosen. Yogananda says the same thing. To be the chosen, to know your divine presence. The more awake we become, the more responsibility, the more that is asked of us. And so I even look at us as a lighthouse community. It's not that we're chosen and other communities aren't. Every community is chosen. We honor every community. You are chosen, you are blessed by God, but so are we, and we need to own that. To be chosen, you have to own it. That's what we see in the Bible. We see the history of the Jewish people. They own that, the sense of their own importance and value in the divine presence eyes. Do we own that the Lighthouse Center for Spiritual Living is important to the divine presence, that we are the center of the universe where there is no circumference? And from that place, as we put the divine presence before, the love of God before everything else, before our social activities, our business activities, before everything else, we put the love of the divine one. First and foremost, we are in a divine relationship with this one. And from that place, what is it that we are contributing? There are so many people in this community who have contributed to make this community be what it is in these 5 years. And I see these next 5 years as an incredible expansion of what we contribute to the world. We have so much to give. We have so much to contribute. And it's not about numbers. I opened up Deuteronomy today. as I was reading it, and over, God was speaking to the Jewish people and says, it does not matter that you are smaller than everybody else. All these 7 kingdoms, and it names the 7 kingdoms, they're all bigger and powerful. It doesn't matter. You are chosen to do this work. Step into it. It's not about numbers. It's about knowing who you really are. The more you know, as I love Ernest Holmes has said, one in God is a majority. When we are one with the one, when we are in alignment, we are doing the work of the divine. Our intention is how much can we contribute as a community, as a lighthouse community. What do we have to give? Because the more we are shining and allowing that gift to be, the more we are becoming freer, more loving, more joyful, more blissful, more peaceful, more full of grace and more abundance. That's what it means, using Judaism as our guide to be the chosen. So my invitation to you this week is to continue to stay in the question, because no one can answer it for you. I've been answering that question using the Jewish religion. But ultimately the answer is yours, between you and your divine self, between you and your infinite self. What does it mean for me to be chosen? Everyone else is chosen. This is not about being, when we really recognize that everyone else is chosen and I'm chosen, there's no inferiority, there's no superiority. We're all equal. But it's owning our own light. What does it mean for me, my own personal expression on this earth, which is essential? What does that mean for me to be chosen? I want you to ask yourself that. And then when you're at work, what does it mean for me? What would it feel like if I was at work and I felt like I'm chosen? The divine, in the midst of all of this, is choosing me as well as everyone else, but it's choosing me too. And to really own, what does that mean for me? Will that change how I interact with people, how I talk with people? And as a chosen one, and as I am, because I'm chosen, I'm choosing God. It always goes back and forth. I'm choosing God as first and foremost. Or I'm saying a God like up there, but God in here. What can I contribute as a service to God? What can I give? What is that light that wants to shine through me today, in this moment? What can I give? And that can look different. It will look different for everybody. There's nobody here who's the same. There's no template for what that looks like. And nobody has the right to tell you what it looks like. It has to be with an integrity with you and your divine presence within. What does it look like for me to shine and give in this moment? Now, we always fall short. I know I always fall short. It's not about being perfect. Clearly, I mean, I love that about the Jewish history. They are so far from perfect. They always are falling short. But we get to pick ourselves back up again. How in this moment, how do I live the chosen person? How do I contribute? How do I give? It's a constant question. It's something that I'm working on all the time. How do I continue all the time to love the divine more than anything in the material world, anything that I can see, taste it? How do I love the divine even more than, where am I not, why am I not, and how can I be better? How can I shine my light more? How can I contribute more? I feel definitely with the Lighthouse, we have so much more to give. What does that look like? What does that feel like? I want to give more. How do we do that? Individually and collectively. Are you willing to try this week? Yeah? The chosen? Do you feel that your sense of chosenness, have you've been in that question? And what that means for you and your divine intelligence to know your own love? To know that you are absolutely unconditionally loved all of the time, no matter what? That's the other, I've mentioned this before, but it's one thing I love about, well, as we look at the history of the Jewish people, how much they fail, and that love of God is always there. It never stops. It never says, all right, I'm gone. It doesn't. The Old Testament doesn't just end and say, okay, you screwed up, I'm gone, I'm out of here. We're always loved. We're always loved. We can continue to fail, and we're always loved. You are chosen. You are completely unconditionally loved and accepted. I know that everything that we have all been doing individually and collectively, we have been doing to the best of our ability, and I know we can always become more. That's why we have people like Reverend Michael, or books, or teachers that inspire us to remind us there's always more, and there's never an end, that this is infinite. What does that more look like? How can I shine more and live life as the one? Let's pray. And since next week is Practitioner Sunday, just to bring that energy, I'm going to ask the practitioners to please stand, just to hold that energy with us. They're just holding this energy of oneness. They've done so much work. inner work so they can be greater realizations of the Divine One and be of service to this community from that place. For the service, I give thanks. But even as we recognize and know that we've all done the work, and we recognize and value each and every one of us, that in the divine presence and power, it is fully in each and every one of us. There's no separation, there's no better or less. That everyone in this room is chosen by the Divine One right here and right now, where we are the center where there is no circumference. The center where there is no circumference. There is no beginning and no ending. The absolute presence is beyond all time and space. All measurable distinctions are dissolved into the nothingness from which it came, and there is only one. And we stand in this awareness and this truth. We accept that we are even now realizing these truths as ourself. That there is no self apart from this one power and one presence. There is not God and. There is not God and Harriet. There is God as Harriet. There's God as the lighthouse. There's a God as each and every one of us. There are no walls. There is no separation. There's only one, and each and every one of us is one. So there's only one thing happening in this room right here and right now. We absolutely melt and dance in this awareness of one power and one presence. We delight in this energy and bliss of one power and one presence. We don't need to hold on to anything, attach to anything, and we don't need to resist anything, because it is always already perfect in the absolute, and we are all one in that absolute right here and right now. We claim it, we accept it, and we know it for ourselves, for our neighbors, to our right and to our left, in front of us and behind us. We hold and vibrate and pulsate at this wonderful vibrational frequency of light and of love and wholeness and creativity and joy and harmony and prosperity and health and all that the divine is all of the time. We claim and accept this for each and every one of us as individuals and as a collective. And as we know this for the entire planet, for all sentient life forms. There's one power, one presence that is in, through, and as all life, as every atom and cell of creation, of all the billions and billions and galaxies of stars, of all time and dimensions of time and space. It is everything in, through, and as all life. There is no place where it stops and something else begins. It is everything now, and we are swimming in this wonderful oceanic consciousness of oneness. We cannot be outside of it. It is impossible to be outside of it. It is impossible to make it anything other than what it already is. We do not need to make anything happen, change, or fix anything in the absolute. It already exists, and we are one with it here and now. We are aligned with it. It is breathing us. It is thinking us. It is feeling us. It is expressing in, through, and as us, and we can't help but express. As we know this oneness and feel it pouring through every atom and cell of our being, we can't help but shine and give of our heart, our body, our mind, and our soul in every area of our life. We say yes. We say yes to this infinite power, this infinite love, this infinite grace pouring through in each and every one of us. We say yes to those people who are hurting or in pain, are feeling separation, are feeling not enoughness. For those who have no voices, for those who have suffered, we feel and know the wholeness and the perfection, that which already is fully and completely being itself in all life form, in all life form. There is no place where there is not this infinite love intelligence. We are the place to hold that for ourselves, for this beautiful planet, for those we love, for those we don't even know, but we see and hear their pain. We are one. We are one. We are one. And it is from and as this oneness that all healing and miracles happen. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for choosing life itself, and for life itself choosing the divine presence, the source of all life. And from this place we shine and we shine and we shine until we can shine for all eternity. To God be the glory. In deep and abiding joy and everlasting peace, I release this word into the law of life, knowing that as it has been spoken, it is done. And I invite us all to say together as us one, and so it is. Amen and amen.